So just moving on. So modern day banking was started by the Knights Templar. So this form of banking that we have nowadays, just uh, there were different forms of currency or money before the Knights Templar ever existed. But the banking that we have nowadays, basically the international banking that we have nowadays, was actually started by the Knights Templar. Um, so just to explain who the Knights Templar were, they were a Roman Catholic order of knights that was started by a French knight named Hugues de Payens, along with 8 relatives and acquaintances. Now I'm not even sure if I've pronounced the name properly. Initially the order was called the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, later called the Knights Templar. At a time when Jerusalem was so they were this order of the Templars was created at a time when Jerusalem was controlled by Christians. So with the support of Baldwin II, the ruler of Jerusalem, the Knights Templar set up their headquarters on the Temple Mount, hence why they were called the Knights Templar, which was a source of their name, as already stated. Their purpose was to protect pilgrims from Europe who were being robbed and killed by Muslims as they visited Jerusalem. In 1139, Pope Innocent II issued a papal bull that gave the Knights Templar including special rights, basically, including exemption from paying taxes. They set up a network of banks. Their banking system allowed religious pilgrims to deposit money, which was probably in the form of gold or silver, in their home countries, and then they would withdraw the funds in Jerusalem. So just to make that clear, if you let's say you had a pilgrim, a Roman Catholic pilgrim from England, who wanted to travel to Jerusalem, but was now aware that on the way there they might get robbed or killed for their gold, or whatever precious items they were carrying. They would deposit that gold or silver, any valuables in London at one of the banks that was owned by the Knights Templar, and then they would travel to Jerusalem with a receipt, basically maybe with a stamp on it that had been stamped by the Knights Templars in London, and then when they got to Jerusalem, they'd get their money back. Obviously, they would have to pay a fee to the Knights Templar, and that's how the Knights Templar started making their money. Yeah, so the pilgrims would withdraw their funds in Jerusalem after paying a fee to the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar swore an oath of poverty, chastity, and obedience, and expressed particular adoration for the Virgin Mary. Basically, just like the Jesuits, the Society of Jesus, they actually worship the so-called Virgin Mary. Knights Templar became very rich, owning ships, and they also lent money to European monarchs and nobles. One of the kings who was lent a lot of money was French King Philippe IV, who was also unable to pay the Knights Templar back. It is said that one day Philip IV sought refuge in a Knights Templar bank in Paris after his life was threatened because of rioters. And whilst in the building, King Philip saw a lot of gold, silver, and other assets that the Knights Templar owned. And obviously, he then realized how immensely wealthy the Knights Templar were. So some say that King Philip IV then came up with a scheme basically to get rid of the Knights Templar, so that he wouldn't pay them what he owed them, and also basically grab all their money as well in the process. So it is said that not all researchers and those historians who have researched the Knights Templar actually agree on this, but it is said that King Philip IV of France basically pressured the Pope Clement V, I believe it was, Clement V, to dissolve the Knights Templar. So after having a lot of pressure put on him, Clement the Fifth agreed reluctantly, and on Friday, the 13th October 1307, scores of Knights Templars, French Templars, were arrested. Because remember, King Philip IV was a French king, so the Knights Templar were arrested in France. And if you just take note of the date, it was Friday, the 13th October 1307. So that's where this myth comes from about Friday. Any Friday which falls on the 13th of any month, they say there's superstition amongst some that it is bad luck. This is where it actually comes from. So French Templars were arrested, including the order, the Grand Master of the order, whose name was Jacques de Molay. So Knights Templar were brutally tortured until they confessed to committing heresy, homosexuality, fraud, and devil worship, and also spitting on the cross and more. A few years later, they were burnt at the stake in Paris. De Molay, remember De Molay was the Grand Master of the Knights Templar. He was executed in 1314. The properties belonging to the Knights Templar were confiscated and given to a rival order called the Knights Hospitallers. So while burning on the stake, De Molay cursed King Philip IV and also Clement V and said they'll both be dead within a year. Clement the Fifth died of disease, and Philip died of a stroke whilst hunting, all within a year, just like De Molay had cursed them. Although the Knights Templar were abolished, it appears that they went underground. For instance, when Christopher Columbus sailed to the American islands in 1492, the ships that sailed with him had Knights Templar crosses on them. So in order to hide their identities, the Knights Templar created secret societies such as the Illuminati, of which Ignatius Loyola was a member. No, Ignatius Loyola was the one who founded the Society of Jesus. He was actually a member of the Spanish Illuminati, which was known as the Alumbrados. So Loyola was actually arrested twice for being in the Illuminati by the Roman Catholic Office of Inquisition, but was later released on both occasions, which shows the power that the Illuminati had already at that time. It was very unusual for anyone to be set free after being arrested by the office, Roman Catholic Office of Inquisition. So Loyola later went on to create the Society of Jesus, and we can see that there are connections between the Knights Templar and the Jesuits. And in fact, through my research, this is one of the things I've learned, which many researchers and historians have failed to connect, that basically the Knights Templar are the Jesuits and the Jesuits are the Knights Templar. Basically, the Knights Templar, when they were abolished, went underground and resurfaced in the guise of many different secret societies, one of which was the Illuminati. But then, like I've already mentioned, Ignatius Loyola, who basically started the Society of Jesus, was a member of the Illuminati, and then he went on to start or to establish the Society of Jesus with the approval of Pope Paul III, who was Pope at the time. I beg your pardon. Before the Rothschilds became the bankers of the Roman Catholic Church, there was a family called the Fuggers, basically a German family, and they were from Augsburg in Bavaria in Germany. And they had been the wealthiest banking family in Europe in the 16th century. Before the Fuggers as well, we had the Medicis of Florence, had been the wealthiest European banking family. Excuse me. For some who might be thinking, well, banking is not really centered in London. It's not based in London. It's based in the US. That's why we have the US dollar as the the reserve currency of the world. But that's actually incorrect, because basically the Bank of England is owned by the Rothschilds, and that was done through deception when Napoleon, basically the French had this war with the English, where Napoleon was in charge of the French army, and Wellington was in charge of the British army, and basically the Rothschilds basically deceived those that were trading stock at the London Stock Exchange, and they sold all their stock for very cheaply, and then the Rothschilds basically bought the stock at very low prices, and that was done through deception, basically, and that's how the Rothschilds ended up owning the Bank of England. So the Federal Reserve in America basically was also created by agents of the Rothschilds. Although it's called a Federal Reserve, it's not federal. It's not a government bank. It's independently owned, with the Rothschilds owning quite a large share of the Federal Reserve. So that's how banking works. It's also all by deception. So I'd already said this, but the Rothschilds, after buying the Bank of England, sent agents to America to set up a central bank owned by the Rothschilds and their agents. And in fact, that story is quite fascinating in itself. Maybe I'll just give a short summary here of what happened. The Americans in general, including politicians who were congressmen and senators, many of them were opposed to the setting up of a central bank in America. That had been tried a number of times, and in fact, that's what partly got Abraham Lincoln assassinated, because he had basically fought against the setting up of a central bank in America. And there were other presidents as well, some who were poisoned and some who were assassinated in different ways, who had opposed the setting up of a central bank in America. But what had happened in the past is that the American central banks, which were being set up by agents of the Rothschilds, were not allowed to operate permanently. They had basically temporary permission to operate. So yeah, one of the agents that was sent to America to set up a central bank was a man named Jacob Schiff. So I was just explaining just giving a summary of how the Federal Reserve was eventually set up in America. In 1910, there were some agents of the Rothschilds and the Warburgs and the Morgan family, connected to J.P. Morgan, who met on an island called Jackal Island. And they met there secretly and were not even allowed to call each other by their full names. Basically, all under the guise of that they were going there to hunt, and I think they said they were going to hunt ducks or something. So whilst at Jackal Island, they came up with the plans of how to set up a central bank in America, and then they basically paid some politicians in America to go along with this plan, and then the vote to get the legislation through to set up a central bank was done when most politicians, when most congressmen had gone on holiday. It was in December.